Audibility, 0, yes. Audibility on. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening as we reflect a little bit on space. Never Be Lost, Learn to Read the Stars has been co-curated by the Australia Pavilion and the UAE Space Agency. And I'd like to thank the Australia Pavilion for the impeccable hospitality. Every detail has been covered and everything, and they've been the most charming and the most delightful of hosts. I'd like to start with a word about Cultures in Conversation, which is the series taking part tonight, of which Never Be Lost is a part. We're honored to be back for our second event in the series. Cultures in Conversation, the inaugural one was 2 weeks ago with climate and biodiversity. Cultures in Conversation, commissioned by Expo 2020 Dubai and programmed by Alserkal, is part of Expo 2020 Dubai's impressive program for people and planet, which is a series of talks, events, experiences, and public conversations. Cultures and Conversations unfolds over the next 6 months in 10 themed weeks, and it happens kind of under the umbrella of urgency. We're looking at urgent issues, and as partners with Expo 2020 in conceptualizing it, we've tried to bring together a multidisciplinary group of thinkers to address and reimagine some of the critical issues that face us in the Anthropocene. So this geological era that is sort of an endangered planet. A description of Alserkal would not be complete without a description of Alserkal Advisory, which drives forward the whole programming arm, particularly within Cultures and Conversations. And Alserkal Advisory is a little bit like an éminence grise of Alserkal. It unites thinkers and practitioners within the institution, but also from a sort of extensive international network who do two things. They do cultural programming and they establish cultural spaces. And this twin expertise is underpinned by, on one hand, an unconventional approach to content and content strategy, and on the other hand, a lived experience with audiences and context-specific programming. As an institution, Alserkal consistently reassesses its impact on the society, the environment, and local economies. So this evening, we are united under the premise of Never Be Lost, Learn to Read the Stars. And this might sound relatively practical, like kind of how-to manual of, surviving in the desert or finding your way out of an unnavigable situation. This is really not working. But I would say there is a little bit of that. There's a little bit of the practicality of stars as a kind of textbook, or the sky as a law book, as one of our presenters says. But I think tonight really unfolds under the sign of imagination. Today's space conjures up many different images. We have billionaires blazing across the cosmos at great expense to everyone. We have space as a site of conflicting and competing national ambitions. We have space that continues to be a mysterious realm peopled by aliens that we scrutinize over and over with different results. And it's also a site of ferocious competition to have ever sharper knowledge and ever sharper technology. And on a planet increasingly fragilized by human recklessness, perhaps space is also wound up in the idea of redemption, that maybe there's some giant cosmic second chance that space enables. But this evening, I'd like you to discard all of these ideas and put these ideas aside, because tonight we're going to turn to the ancients. We're going to turn to old thought. Tonight is a space of intuition, poetry, mythology, and wisdom. It's the knowledge cultivated by the first astronomers, as Dr. Dwayne Hallmacher describes, the early Aboriginal stargazers. It's the cultural practices of the Maori, deeply inflected by astronomy, as Dr. Rangi Matamura explains. And Dr. Mathur will take us on an exploration of the specifically Middle Eastern mythologies that have trickled down into contemporary stargazing methodologies. Today, our speakers will show you another take on space. This is not a place to be conquered and mastered, but rather a place to be read. And reading space, that determined, intensive, slow gesture of watching and interpreting, as you will discover, determines much of how we interact with the planet that we inhabit. So we have 3 esteemed presenters this evening, but to complement their very learned dive into ancient knowledge systems, we've commissioned the poet, artist, and filmmaker Nujum El-Khanum to fathom space from the poet's point of view, through the prism of poetry. Now, poets have constantly tried to make sense of space, make sense of the stars, and they have looked at the rhythm, the harmony, the organization of the cosmos, but they've also looked at its chaotic side as well. The stars are filled with stories, as Nujum will tell you. And Nujum, like many poets throughout history, has tried to create a unique connection with the night sky and with space. And through Nujum's poetry, under the starlit planetarium of the Australia Pavilion, you will, I think, begin to feel the cosmos. I think you'll begin to live the cosmos as the ancients intended us to feel and live and intuitively be in touch with it. So just a word before I introduce our speakers. Because of the conditions that we're all sadly familiar with, Dr. Rangi Matamura and Dr. Dwayne Hallmacher were unable to travel to be with us this evening. So they've prepared videos for us. Go ahead and use this if you want. They've prepared videos for us that I'll be sharing with you. And I'd just like to thank them and thank everyone involved in the efforts to make these videos as perfect as possible. So in strict kind of stringent lockdown conditions that are still in place there. So our first video is from Dr. Rangi Matamua, who is a Maori academic based in the Faculty of Maori and Indigenous Studies at the University of Waikato in New Zealand. He has undertaken significant research in the areas of Maori language revitalization, Maori culture, Maori astronomy, and broadcasting. We will be viewing his video now, but I'd also like to thank the New Zealand Pavilion for having nominated Dr. Rangi for this event and this program. Thank you very much.
Kia ora. Welcome to this presentation where we are going to be looking at the history of Māori astronomy. We're going to look at also at where Māori astronomy is today and our future. So, no mai haere mai, welcome into this presentation. So before we actually get to talk about Māori astronomy, it's really important that we understand our Māori understanding of the world and how it was created. And in the beginning, Māori believed that the earth and the sky were stuck together in this embrace. And between this tight and dark enclosure, all the Māori gods existed. They were born into this state, and they were frustrated with the weight of their parents and the fact that there was no light and no space. So they pushed it back against their parents, and in particular, the god Tāne, the Māori god of the forest, forced his parents apart and created the space that we have. But there was no light in the world. And this is where we see the introduction of what we know as Te Whānau Mārama, or the family of light. So Te Whānau Mārama, for Māori, are this family of light that includes the sun, the moon, the stars, a small light called Hinatore, Parikoikoi, the dark, gloomy nights, and also a small star called Hinerauamo. And they existed in a house built for them by their father Tangotango, which means the darkness, and their mother Wainui, which is all the bodies of water here on Earth. And they existed in this house, and it was actually Tāne again, who had separated his parents, who went and found a canoe, Te Waka o Tamarereti, and on board that canoe he placed the objects of light and took them into the sky and placed them into the heavens. And that's how Māori believe we get the sun, the moon, the stars, and all of the astronomical bodies that we see above our heads. And so astronomy plays such a crucial role in who Māori are, our history, our beliefs, our religion, our ceremonies, our practices. It's infused into our landscape. It's part of our place names. We have built our houses around the astronomical bodies. We've got so many proverbs and sayings that are related to the sun, the moon, and the stars. For instance, these craft here are double-hulled canoe, or what we call wakahaurua, and it was our ancestors that set sail on these crafts and explored the Pacific Ocean, using the stars to navigate them from one island to another, all the way across the Central Pacific, right down here to Aotearoa, as far north as Hawaii, and right across to Easter Island. And we can see the evidence of the wonderful navigation and the star-driven navigation of our ancestors when we look at the name Matariki. Matariki is the name that we refer to as the Pleiades. And right across the whole of the Pacific, you can see Matariki, or names that are similar to Matariki, that are referring to the Pleiades. So this is an example of just how extensive their seafaring technology was, and the fact that they took their star names to all of these different islands right throughout the Pacific. Here in Aotearoa, we then took that knowledge that was mostly based around navigation and applied it to new practices here in this land. So our ancestors would look to the moon and the stars to tell them when they should fish. They also looked to the stars and the sun and the moon to tell them when they should plant and when they should harvest. And here we have an example of stars rising over a kumara or sweet potato garden. And there is an elderly man who has just harvested his kumara crop based on the lunar phases and the position of certain stars. Some of our stars told us when we should hunt certain species or when they would be returning, like different birds from different parts of the world, back to Aotearoa, New Zealand to lay their eggs. It also told us when these creatures would be in their most prime condition to be caught and harvested. And then we applied this very detailed, environmentally driven, astronomically driven system of time that used the sun or the position of the sun to tell us season. It used the pre-dawn rising of particular stars to tell us what month we were in. And it used lunar phase to tell us what day we were in. And these three elements, sun plus star plus moon, drove our traditional maramataka or lunar calendar, environmentally driven calendar systems of time. We also applied names to many, many stars, and here is probably the best known here in Aotearoa, which is Matariki, or the Pleiades, and the 9 names that many of us have here in Aotearoa. But they were more than just points of light for us. They also were interwoven into our spirituality and our belief systems. And here they are as deity, connected to different parts of the environment and informing us about what our world would be like in the upcoming season, because Matariki was the marker of the Māori New Year. And this was how traditional Māori society was driven. It was often led by our astronomical markers. And in this image, we see a comet streaking across the sky over Mount Taranaki in the late 1800s. And that was a marker. It was a marker. They were not just markers of time, they were also bringers of omens. They were associated to who we are and very embedded into our cultural practices. However, due to the arrival of new settlers, particularly from Europe in the 1800s and into the 1900s, and the change in our education system, much of our knowledge base around Māori astronomy was lost. And as Māori ceased to be involved in our traditional practices around astronomy and really began following a universalized system of education and even of time as we synced our rhythms into the Western solar Gregorian calendar that we followed. Much of this knowledge base was lost to time. And parts of it were captured by certain, most often non-Māori writers, like this man here, Elson Bess, who wrote The Astronomical Knowledge of the Māori, and recorded elements of Māori cultural practices associated to astronomy, but they also thought that the book should be closed as there was no more evidence or no more recordings to be had, and this limited fragments of knowledge was all that remained. However, since the late 1970s, 1980s, there has been a renaissance in Māori society. It's been driven by the Māori language movement, by arts, by politics, by culture. And there has been this uprising and the sharing of culture across Aotearoa, New Zealand. And Māori have been looking for a way to reclaim what was lost. And as part of this renaissance, we have seen a new generation wanting to understand the traditional practices, astronomical practices of our ancestors. So there's been a whole group of people getting to work, looking at the record, not just in English, but in Māori, doing research within their own communities, and the wealth of knowledge that has begun to appear, snippets here and there, sometimes quite detailed records of astronomy that have been held by different families, by different individuals, by elders, that have been carved into houses, written in the Māori language, are now starting to come back to the surface. We have new books being written about this all of the time, and new information coming that have been recorded in manuscripts from the 1800s that are now starting to help our people understand just how extensive and detailed our knowledge around astronomy was. There's a whole generation now that are looking to sync their lives and their practices in with the lunar calendar system. Here in Aotearoa, we have resurrected over 500 and found evidence of 500 different lunar calendar systems just in Aotearoa, because they are built around regionally specific environmental factors and connect the sun again to the moon, to the flowering of plants, the spawning of different species, bird activities. And this has really began to become an area of interest here in Aotearoa. And since the 1990s, one of the particular really big movements associated with Māori astronomy has been the rise of Matariki. Matariki was the single biggest celebration in the traditional Māori calendar system. It was the marker of our new year. And when the Pleiades cluster, or Matariki, is seen above the horizon before the rising of the sun in the middle of winter, in the correct lunar month of the correct lunar phase, our ancestors celebrated the new year. Since the 1990s, people have began practicing this again. And in the last 10 years, its celebration has spread right across the country. City councils and regional councils, cities, community groups, it's on television, it is right across the entire country. It is now becoming one of our biggest yearly celebrations here in Aotearoa. The celebration is driven out of our traditional Māori practices that are associated with astronomy and have now found a way into our modern society, because it's not just connected to the astronomical observance, it's built around these values that Matariki actually portrays, which are unity, collectivity, sharing, coming together at this time of year to feast, remembering the past, celebrating the present, and planning for the future. And so in terms of the future, here in Aotearoa, New Zealand, last year, the government decided that it would make Matariki an actual public holiday. So we were going and are going to celebrate the rising of Matariki as a national public holiday from this year coming onwards. And to sort this holiday out, they gathered together a group of Māori language, Māori cultural, Māori astronomical experts to set out really the dates and how the dates would work. Also, the most appropriate way that Matariki and the Māori New Year should be celebrated, along with the values associated with the celebration. And here we have these experts who were gathered together using the traditional Māori lunar environmental calendar system, who have set the dates for the next 30 years. Now, many people had a little bit of an issue with how is this going to work because they're two different systems of time. It works exactly the same way that we celebrate Easter. Easter is built on a traditional lunar calendar system, and it shifts up and down our solar Gregorian calendar every year. That's exactly how Matariki is going to work here in Aotearoa. And so from the year 2022 onwards, Matariki, this Māori-led astronomical celebration, is now going to be embedded into the cultural narrative and the cultural understanding and practices of all of us here in Aotearoa. And this is a future. This is a future that we hope Matariki will be able to inform. For many, many generations, Māori and the ancestors of the Māori practiced these ceremonies and these traditions and these observations as part of our identity. And they were lost. They ceased to be practiced for a number of years as a new wave of settlers came in, and really our identity was a mirrored image of what was happening in Great Britain. But in the last 3 or so decades, there's been a change in our society. And people are wanting to know what our own identity here is in Aotearoa. And we are hoping that Matariki can be one of the pillars of bringing all people together as one, to acknowledge the rising of the various points of the stars in Matariki, and to bring us together as one people with an old identity that's becoming new, and a way of bringing us together and forging who we are as a nation. And that is the hope, and that is the desire of us moving forward into the future. And we hope that Matariki can be one of those real rallying points for who we are as a nation now and into the future. So really that's all I have. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou e hoama.
Next, from the UAE, Dr. Mashhoor Ahmed Al-Waqt at the University of Sharjah, and a director at the Sharjah Academy for Astronomy, Space Sciences, and Technology. With 45 published aim, he has also developed a method for analyzing close visual binary stars called Al-Wardat's method. He's understandably extremely proud of the Sharjah Academy for Astronomy, Space Sciences, and Technologies. And on his behalf, I think I can welcome you all there. I think I can encourage you all to go there and visit, where you will be most welcome. Dr. Mashhoor is undergoing the same torture that I underwent earlier. So we'll just wait for that to conclude. Dr. Mashhoor.
Thank you, Kevin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It was a nice talk from our previous colleague about the mythologies regarding astronomy from different continents away from us. So let's go back to the Arabian Peninsula and to the Arabian countries. What do we have about astronomy here? What we learned from our ancestors, is it the same or completely different? Why we hear that, as said, the Easter is moving back and forward? What do we have from poets about astronomy? Mashhoor Al-Wardat I'm going to talk about the stars. Learn to read the stars. النجوم دليلك في الصحراء. Where is the pointer, by the way? This here. Yeah, sorry. I have too many things in my hand. Let's check the pointer. Yeah, I think you can see the pointer because I can't use 3 hands. I have another pointer here. Okay, let's start with this one. This is the moon. This is how we see the moon if we look through a telescope, any kind of telescopes. 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, 10-inch. We have too many if you visit us in Sharjah Academy for Astronomy, Space Science and Technology. It's nearby, half an hour by the car. You are very welcome and for free. For the audience here, you are welcome for free to join us. And also we have sometimes we have excursions to the desert with our telescopes, everything. We go, especially the weather is getting better now. So you are also very welcome to join us in the desert to see such things. We are going to talk about the sky, the source of inspiration, some concepts and main landmarks on the night sky, celestial sphere, Earth, Sun, and the Moon, the symphony, Arabic and local mythologies. Okay, this is another photo from USA, and you can see here, you can see the aurora from another side, from North Pole. And you can see also what's called Nahr al-Majra in Arabic, the galaxy. This is the galaxy you call al-Majra. Okay, so this is well known in all over the world for every nation on this globe. So it's known for different names. Even has always been the source of inspiration for man. It was the source of inspiration for timing, calendars, religions, and poetry, as we have seen. Just stars were the guide during the night and much more. So we will go back to stars to see some planets just a few minutes after the sunset. The sun is setting now. If we look here, we have the Earth. So this is the moon, and this is the sun. We can put, may I use the other pointer? I guess I need this one. Okay. We may put 108 Earths from the edge to the edge on the sun, and we may put 108 suns from the Earth up to the sun. And we may put 108 moons from the Earth to the moon. This is the great symphony created by Allah, by the Creator. So, really amazing thing. With some change, actually. We have sometimes the moon is in the apogee, sometimes in the perigee, sometimes the sun is in the aphelion and perihelion. We call it بالعربي الأوج والحضيض بتبتعد بتقرب. لكن in general, this is we can say, the average. So, what we have else? Moving stellar objects which can be seen by the naked eye. We have the sun, the moon. The sun, the moon, you will see it after midnight today, okay? Now it's in the second half now. And we have Mars. Mars already now beyond the sun. We will not be able to see it. But we have also Mercury. We can see it if we go to the desert these days, exactly after the sunset, nearby the sun. You have to focus really to see Mercury. And we have Jupiter. Jupiter, it's over there. I guess that I can see it now. Somehow, if I look somewhere, it should be in this direction. This is the south, this is the west, and this is the east. So the south, the north. We need to know the directions depending on the sunset. And we have also Venus. So our ancestors, they saw only 7 moving objects: sun, moon, Venus, Jupiter, Mercury, and Mars. In addition to the moving slowly Saturn, we can see it also after a few minutes over there. So we will be able now, if you go outside, you will see 3 of these objects. You will see Venus, you will see Jupiter, you will see Saturn, and the moon at the end of the night, and the sun already sits there. So 7 days. That's why we have 7 days a week. If they could see Uranus or Neptune, so we would have 9 days a week. So it would be a long days, yeah, a long week it would be. So that's why we have in all languages, except the Arabic, by the way. The Arabic language, it doesn't still keeping the names of the gods, like Thor, like Freya, like Saturn, like Tuesday. It's the god of war after Mars. So we have moon, well-known, moon, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, it's the wooden Mercury, the god of trade. And we have the god of agriculture, the god of the gods, the major one is Jupiter. In Arabic, اشترى الحسن والجمال. That's why they call it Jupiter. اللي هو المشتري. And Freya, the god of beauty. It's Venus. You can see it right now, just beyond this wall. So, how can we find our way in the desert? It's quite easy. Just look to the north. I don't know where's the north. Okay, look to the west. Where's the west? Where the sun exactly sits down, it's the west. So we have the west here, we have the east, we have the south and the north. During the night, I don't know. Again, slowly, please, mashur, a bit by bit, okay? How can find my way in the desert, okay? Just try to find this image. We call this the Ursa Major. In Arabic, we call it Banat Nash. Well, what does that mean? No, the killed man. Why? Because in the desert we are fighting all the time. So they called it the daughters of the killed man. They never seen a bear. But in Europe, they call it the big bear, well known. But I myself, I never saw a bear. I heard it. Just so, and this is the Ursa Minor. In Arabic, even if you go to the catalogs now, these stars, the 7 sisters, still keeping the Arabic names. Al-Qa'id, Al-Mi'zar, Al-Migraz, Al-Miraq, Al-Fakhd, Al-Ili, Al-Dubba. Arabic names. Yeah. You can see Miraq, Al-Dubba. Al-Dubba means the bear. Why? Because our ancestors, the scientists, they took the translations from the Greek, and they translated this star as a dubba, it's the bear. That's why we have such names for stars. We have, by the way, more than 260 names, Arabic names in the sky for stars. So again, these are the 7 names, the 7 sisters. If you make a line direct to this direction from Mirak to Ad-Dubba, you will find a star called Polaris. Here in UAE, they call it Al-Yah, Al-Itijah. It shows exactly the north. This is how can we find our way in the desert. It's quite easy, by the way. What if we don't see this big Dipper or Ursa Major? It's usually, we can see it only a part of the night, and after a few hours, it will disappear below the horizon. So you will see another constellation called Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia it shows you also the directions. This is how the translation from the Greek to the Arab to the Islamic scientists, and then again back to Europe, and with the names of these stars. This is the Cassiopeia. You can use Cassiopeia these days. After midnight, these days, you will be able to see Cassiopeia like this. So if you make just this triangle down to Polaris. So either you can use Ursa Major in winter, or in summer you can use Cassiopeia to find exactly the north. Here I can point to this star. It's over there. It should be over there. 25 degrees above the horizon. Why 25 degrees? Because it's the latitude of Sharjah and Dubai. It's the latitude of Dubai, 25 degrees north the equator. So this star, Aliyah or Polaris, should be 25 degrees above the horizon, exactly. So if you go to Europe, you will find Polaris a bit over there. Why? Because the Earth is a ball, it's not flat. as some people is still convinced of that. Sorry. Yeah. By the way, this was discovered by an ancient scientist before the Christ, 300 years before the Christ. They discovered that the Earth is a globe. It's not a flat. By the image of the eclipse, it's like a curve. A curve means a ball. And also Eratosthenes in Egypt, Egyptian Greek astronomer, he discovered that he saw the sun in a well, in a swan, but he couldn't see that in Alexandria. So he made a measurement and he measured the diameter of the Earth at that time. And now they are saying that the Earth is flat. They never fly in a flight, or I don't know how they convinced of that. Okay. The stars actually, when we look to any constellation, either Ursa Major or you will see there like Scorpion, like الحمل we call in Arabic حمل الثور جوزة السرطان ورى عليت سنبل الميزان ورى مع عقرب بقوس الجدي نضح الدلو بركة الحيتان. These zodiacs, actually, why we see them near each other? Actually, it's not near each other. Some stars are very far away and some stars are near. But when we look to them, look to your fingers like this, you will see them near each other. But actually, one is far and one is nearby. So we have the celestial equator, because we are here in Dubai. If you go to the pole exactly and you stand there, you will see all stars moving like this around you. But if you stand here in Dubai, you will see the stars rising from east to and sitting there to the west, like the sun exactly. We will have Polaris over there, and we call this point the zenith, and we call this point the nadir. Nadir is an Arabic word also. It's an English and Arabic word. So we have the zenith, the nadir, these Arabic names. We can use our hands to measure the distances. Each day, the moon is going to the east 13 degrees. How can I measure 13 degrees? 13 degrees, just make your hand like this. Use the same eye, like this. This is the 13 degrees. So if the moon is here today, tomorrow it will be here. 13 degrees to the east, 13 degrees, 13 degrees. So in 29 days and a half, it will make a full circle. We call it the month, the lunar month. We can also, this is how we observe the stars near the pole, and this is how we observe the stars near the equator. All stars rising up like this from the east up to the zenith and then to the west. Maybe some of you are interested in the zodiacs. So I can say that in Arabic we have a say, حمل الثور جوزة السرطان ورعى الليث سنبل الميزان ورمى عقرب بقوس الجدية نضح الدلو بركة الحيتان. You can remember this say or poem. We have areas. By the way, if you want to know exactly when you were born, just look to these dates, because those written in the newspapers or on the internet are not true. That was 2,000 years ago. But now, if you were born in April 19 up to May 13, you are from Aries, not from Pisces. You have to check that. So, what else we have? I don't want to take much more time. About the lunar phases, we call it the waxing crescent, but these days we have the waning. Now this is the waxing gibbous. Now these days we have the waning gibbous. So the moon will rise after midnight. This is we have some says, as we have seen in the Albiro, that they have some says, they have some relation with the stars. Also, as Arabs, we have some says. We have a very good relation with the sky. One of these stories is connected with Pleiades. Pleiades, called in Arab An-Najm. There is a say, I have to say it in Arabic, by the way. بقران 9 لا تنزل بحوران، وبقران 7 ناوشها بالأطاريف، بقران 5 انزل بوسط حوران تضفي على الخلفات لون المراديف. This say or poem shows or just advice from a man to his son during the winter. He didn't say a winter. He said during the conjunction of the moon with Pleiades, when the moon is 9 days, age of 9 days, don't go to Haran. Haran is between Syria and Jordan. Winter is very heavy rain. Don't go there with your cattle. So you will lose it. So after that, this is Grand Tis'a. Grand Sab'a. Okay, Grand Sab'a Nawshab la Tarif. After that, the next month, Grand Sab'a, the conjunction with 7 days, go nearby. After that, in a month, Grand Hamse, the conjunction when the moon is 5 days, go exactly at the center of that area and you will get your cattle full there, yeah. So we have these says well known in Arabic mythologies. This is the Grand Tis'a, the Grand Sab'a, the Grand Hamse. Again, we have the conjunction of 9 days. The moon is 9 days. The conjunction with the moon is 7 days. The conjunction with the moon is 5 days. This is the say. Okay. We have another say also. Gran Hadi, Bard Badi. Gran Hadi ala al-may mnadi. Gran Hadi, Bard Badi, when the moon conjunct with the Pleiades as first night. This one, it's not in this year. We have to go a bit. This is Gran Hadi. It's in June, so they will call for water. Gran Hadi, the other one, 21st. We have this one usually in August or September. Gran Hadi, Bard Badi. The cold will start. It's 21 days. So we have the moon with 21 days. This is the waning gibbous, by the way, not waxing. You can see it like these days after the midnight. So this is the well-known. These are the well-known things in Arabic mythologies, and it's well-known in all areas in our countries. This is the Grand Tis'a. This is 9 days when the moon near Pleiades. Again, you can see the motion, the movements from day to day. Again, I'll go back like this. Yeah. So we have these in winter. So you can see that from a day to day, the moon is getting bigger and bigger. And from a month, Pleiades is going down and down to the west. That's we have. Okay, again, this one, during, yeah, this one, again, during the 7 days, we call it Grand Sab'a. And the last one, this is a Grand Hadi. It's a Grand Hadi al Imam Nadi. It's usually in June, late May or in June. Again, what we have else, sorry, where should I point? Okay, this way, yeah. So we have also, let's talk about Suhail. It's well known in this area, Suhail, Canopus. لأن شفت السيل لا تأمن السيل. If you see Canopus, never go to any place where the flood could be there. Flash floods are well known in the desert. It's raining away from you, and suddenly you get a flash flood. It will destroy everything. If you are sleeping there with your cattle, it will be destroyed. So be careful. This is say in Arabic. لأن شفت السيل لا تأمن السيل. If you see Canopus, now be careful. You have to be away from the valleys. This is the well-known say. And Suhail, Canopus, we can see these nights. You have to wait until the dawn. After 4 a.m., you will be able to see it, 3 or 4 a.m. Usually it rises here in UAE in 24 of August. The sailors say 14th of August. Okay, there's 10 days between the land and the sea. اوكي ولما تراءت عند مرو منيتي وحل بها جسمي او وخل كما يقول بعض وحانت وفاتي اقول لاصحابي ارفعوني فإنه يقر بعيني أن سهيل بدالية. This is a poem from ancient time, more than 1,200, more than 1,300 years ago. And this, the man here is saying that I would like, he was dying in an area away from the European peninsula. And he was born here. He knows Suhail very well. So he asked his colleagues to raise him up to see Suhail, to see Canopus. He's like his friend. Just show me Canopus before I die. Yeah, that's why you will not be able to see Canopus if you go to the northern parts, like if you go to Turkey or if you go to Europe, you will not be able to see Canopus. You have to be from this area to see Canopus, or you go to the southern parts of the globe. Thank you very much. Okay, now the sky is getting darker. Those who are sitting here, you can see a star over there. Look here, over there. This is Jupiter. This is Jupiter. I think you can see it. You will not be able to see it from there. And we have nearby, to the right, exactly, just put one fingers like this, you will see another one. It's Saturn. And if you go outside there, you will see a very bright star. It's Venus, beyond this wall. So we have, this is the ecliptic. All zodiacs are there. حمل الثور جوزة السرطان, etc. So just when you go outside, just try to see these planets. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Mashhour. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. And I think we'll all start scrutinizing the sky a little bit more closely. And thank you also for bringing us so deeply into the region. Next, we'll zoom out and go to Australia again. We'll go to Australia. Dr. Dwayne Hallmacher is an associate professor of cultural astronomy in the School of Physics at the University of Melbourne. And he works closely with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders and communities to learn about their astronomical knowledge and teaching. He also mentors and supports Indigenous students pursuing studies in astronomy, physics, and space science. We will be viewing a video of Dr. Dwayne called Star Knowledge and the Torres Strait. Thank you very much.
Hi. Thank you for joining me. My name is Dwayne Hallmacher. I'm an associate professor of cultural astronomy at the University of Melbourne in Australia. And today, I'm very excited to introduce you to three elders from the Torres Strait, from whom we're going to learn a tremendous degree of star knowledge. The Torres Strait is an archipelago of islands between Cape York Peninsula and Papua New Guinea. In the eastern Torres Strait are the three islands of Mer, Dalwar, and Wair. Uncle Alotopo, Uncle Sigar Passi are all Meriam elders from Mer. The elders teach us that everything on the land is reflected in the sky. As is above, so is below. The stars serve as a law book, as a map, as a scientific textbook, and a memory space. Everything you want to know about the world around you, you can find reflected in the stars. In the Torres Strait, there is a special significance for a person whose professional job is to observe the stars. They are the astronomers. In the Western Torres Strait, this person is called a Zugabul Mabayik. It literally translates to star person. Their job is to observe all the subtle changes in the properties and positions of the stars, to tell the people about the changing seasons, the behaviors of plants and animals, the coming weather, when to hold ceremony, when to hunt, fish, garden. This is known as reading the stars. The most significant constellation in the Meriam sky is that of Tagai. Tagai is regarded as a great spiritual man, a warrior, an expert fisherman, an expert hunter. He commands a crew of 13, 12 crew and his trusted first mate, Kareg. The elders tell that long ago, Tagai, Kareg, and the crew went on a fishing expedition onto the reefs. As the day grew on, the crew consumed all of their rations and didn't leave any for Tagai or Kareg. When Tagai found out, he flew into a fit of rage and he killed the 12 crew. He bound them into 2 groups of 6, where they ascended into the sky as the stars Usium and Seg. These are known to people in Western society as the Pleiades and the stars of Orion's belt and scabbard. Tagai and Kareg went to the opposite side of the sky. Tagai is an enormous constellation. His right hand is Corvus the Crow in Western science. His left hand is the Southern Cross. He's holding a giant spear. All the stars in the constellations of Lupus and Centaurus trace out the body and the body features of Tagai. His arms, his elbows and shoulders, his eyes, nose, mouth, his torso and legs, and he's standing in his canoe, which are traced out by the stars of the Western constellation, Scorpius. And Kareg sits at the stern of the canoe as they travel across the sky throughout the year. As these stars rise and set, they dive into the sea and they rise above the ocean. This tells people about the changing seasons. It tells them about the behavior of the animals, when the dugong will be migrating, when the turtles will be laying their eggs, when to go fishing. It also tells you about the changing seasons, going from the dry Sagar to the Nege to the wet cookie season during the monsoon. A great number of other constellations populate the Marian sky. Uncle Sigar Passy, in addition to being the senior elder on Mare, is also a world-famous artist. His paintings have been shown across Australia and throughout the world, winning a great number of awards. His beautiful color palette really rivals that of Van Gogh. It's a stunning reminder of how knowledge is encoded in art. Every one of Uncle Sigar's paintings tells you something important. They are beautiful, but they're also maps of knowledge. Uncle Sigar tells us to look at the crescent moon. Those points of the moon, the horns, or what astronomers call the cusps, sometimes point up, sometimes they point up to the side. That tells you things about the changing seasons throughout the year. But you don't just look at the moon, you look at everything around it. In the Torres Strait, on Mare, the moon is called Meb. Kirkhar Meb is the crescent moon. Uncle Sigar teaches us to look at the clouds, at the water, at the reflection of the moon. Look at everything around you. Look at the behavior of the plants and the insects, the frogs. What does it tell you? We see 2 beautiful artworks that look almost identical. One of them shows the cusps of the moon pointing upwards, and one shows it pointing to the side. But look closely at the surrounding clouds and the water. You'll notice something quite different between the 2. When the cusps of the moon are pointing up, you see those really large puffy clouds, and the water is really choppy. You can't see the reflection of the moonlight in the water very well. But later on, that moon is tilted to the side. You see those thin cirrus clouds, and the water is much calmer, with the moonlight reflecting beautifully. But this tells you about the changing seasons and the weather patterns you find at the time of the year when you see the moon like this. When the cusps of the moon are pointing upward, this is actually the dry season. When the moon is tilted off to the side, that's the wet season. It might not seem like it when you look at the images. It might seem a bit counterintuitive, but it's not. It's understanding what the weather's going to be like the next day. And that's what we learned from Uncle Sigar. It's not just about now, it's about the future. There are a great many songs and dances about the moon. One of them is called Gegetogia. This is an important song. It's a kabkar, a traditional sacred song and dance that connects the different islands across the Torres Strait. In this particular song, the lyrics are in two different languages, one of Mer in the eastern Torres Strait and one of Mabia in the western Torres Strait.
This one is about the moon coming up from home. The path of the moon, the gate, which is land, or in this case Murray Island, is in the path of that moon. That moon is rising from the east, the Torres Strait. Murray Island is in the path of that. The moon is rising from it. Gedge Togia. Ged is island or home or Murray Island. Ged Togia means rise. And in Mabiag language, Mabiag name for moon is Milpal. So there's Mabiag and Murray Island in there together. Milpal Nuka. Gedge Togia. Gedge Togia. Gedge Togia. Milpal Nuka.
Even rare types of phenomena are really important in Marian traditions. Sometimes when you're outside looking up, you might notice a shooting star or a meteor streaking across the sky. On very rare occasions, you'll see a really bright meteor that scientists call a fireball blazing across the sky. This, in Marian traditions, is called a Maier.
When one ready to make transit from this life into the next, this shooting star appears, and the Miriam know that this person who has just died or is about to die, his spirit has been captured and is sent away, and that's where that shooting star, that Maier that is gone through. It has been a belief of the Miriam people that they take the spirit of that person, take it up to highest tree or the very high tree, a treetop, and then putting fire onto it and then sending it through. There have been songs and there have been dances. We dance this one on a very, very special occasion. The fire light that we see in them shooting star that goes, of course, sometimes they're bluish, greenish things associated with the shooting stars. But we call this, the fire. But some of the dances are performed. They're performed with dancers carrying fire.
Thank you for joining me today and learning a little bit about the star knowledge of the Torres Strait. We've just touched the tip of the iceberg, so if you'd like to learn more, you can visit our website at aboriginalastronomy.com.au. And next year, look for our brand new book called The First Astronomers. It's all about the science of indigenous star knowledge. Thank you. Hi, and thank you for joining me.
Okay, now we move into the poetic crescendo of the evening. Nujum El Ghanem is a poet, an artist, and a filmmaker. Those in the UAE may know her very well. She is highly acclaimed. She has published 8 poetry collections. She has produced around 20 films, including short fiction, documentaries, feature-length documentaries as well, art films. She's the founder of Nahar Productions, a film production company based in Dubai. She is also a professional teacher, mentor in filmmaking, art, and creative writing. And in 2019, she was the UAE presence at the Venice Biennial. And an interesting overlap with Australia for Nujum is that she actually holds a master's from the School of Film in Griffith University in East Queensland. And tonight she will be performing I Found My Way to You with Sally Musa, who is also an Australian, and there was a rather serendipitous crossover there as well. So everything oddly converges. The performance will take place in the planetarium, the entrance to which is to my right. There's certain housekeeping rules that we ask you to respect. No filming, no photography, so I would advise you to potentially shut off your phones now. Also, I would encourage you not to speak, because this would be a realm really for the poet and the stars only. So keep that in mind as you go up. My colleagues will be accompanying you through the doors to the right. We would like to accompany the front row here first, so everyone else remains seated, and we will kind of call on you to go up successively. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the speakers, virtual and human. Dr. Mashhour, thank you again. Thank you to all of you for coming. Thank you to the entire team whose names are too long to list. The hospitality of the Australian Pavilion as well. The great organization on both the Alserkal advisory team, the Alserkal team, and also PICO, our partner. And again, thank you all for coming. And I hope you enjoyed Nujum's performance. Thank you.